Fellas, welcome back to the channel. We are doing now a coal guide. I thought about should I do one, but we do have a fair few changes when it comes to coal from the last one. The last one has been is also a couple of years old, and last time we did it, we have a few chip changes in there. I just did a steel guide, I think like 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, and research bio guide. If you want to check it out, I go over all the ships there. And we're now gonna do also a guide for coal ships. The reasoning behind it is that there's gonna be, we don't really get new coal ships at the moment, but there has been some changes from the last one because that guide is so old. And also there's gonna be one coal ship coming, which is the defense. Next patch, we're gonna get this beauty, aka the baby Nelson, the defense for coal. It's gonna be 415,000 coal, which is a lot, and I honestly only would recommend you get it once you're either filled already up with the other coal ships, the high tier ships, or you're just swimming in coal and want the British cruiser. So basically the defense is a large cruiser, or it's counted as a cruiser in game. It looks a bit like a baby Nelson, you could say. It has 56mm guns, which is pretty much BB caliber, like tier 6-7 BB caliber guns, which are very accurate, but you're still a cruiser, and that means you're covered pretty much in 30mm here, so it's also very squishy and easy to citadel. Now overall, I think it's a pretty solid boat. It has also smoke screens and it has torpedo launchers under the ship here in the front, meaning you can also kill people who try to YOLO you. The problem again, it's very squishy, and due to the big guns, the smoke firing penalty is also pretty bad with I think 11 km. So you be the judge about it. I think it's a cool ship, but I don't think it's easy to play though, and it's very expensive. And with this covered, we're gonna go now into the armory to the coal ships that are already in here, and we're continuing on that part. Now I'm only going to focus on tier 10, 9, 7, 8 and 6 tier coal ships, because I think the tier 5, 4 and 3 coal ships are something even as a new player you shouldn't really instantly get. They should only be at the end for collection purposes. You should mainly focus on getting a tier 9 as soon as possible for credit income, because tier 9 premiums give the best credit income. Or tier 10 if you want a specific tier 10. Now we're gonna start with the USS Black. The USS Black is an absolutely amazing coal ship. It used to be, for the people remember, like 6, 7 years ago, it used to be the reward ship for ranking out 3 times, and I think it was also for steel back then. I can't remember everything about it, but basically you get a Fletcher castle with the 5 guns. You also get American smoke screens, and what makes this ship so special over Fletcher is that you have smoke screens, American smoke screens and radar in the same slot, in 2 different slots, meaning you have amazing smokes and you also have a 7.5 radar in a combination smoke radar duration, smoke radar combination, always deadly. You also have decent firepower with 5 Fletcher guns, and you also have really good torpedoes. Now the torpedoes are very slow, like very, very slow. They're called in the community sea mines. They go like 40-ish something knots, but they have insane amount of range, 13.7 kilometers I think, and they're stealthy AF. Now this is really important to mention, because these torpedoes might be extremely slow, but as a comparison, you have less reaction time than on most Japanese high tier torpedoes, like the 12 kms and so on. Like when you see them and you don't have a high reactive, it's too late to dodge pretty much. So that's how stealthy they are. It doesn't matter that they're so slow. The only thing that's really gonna like stop you from really getting the hits there is either that they take an insane amount of time to reach the target, or that people have hydro on and then they're basically useless. But as long as there's no hydro, they're extremely stealthy and you're gonna smash a lot of people with them as well. Black is definitely one of my top recommendations when it comes to steel chips, cold chips, because it's just fantastic. It can do everything. It can play around caps, it can farm, it can spot. The only real downside you have, it's not that fast. Other than that, it's an absolute amazing ship, and I would definitely recommend it. And one more thing worth mentioning is It has American arcs, so if you don't like the American 127mm arcs, which are fairly slow, that could also be a downside. Other than that, absolutely amazing and one of my top picks when it comes to coal ships. Next one is Nostashimi. Now, Nostashimi is a ship I wouldn't recommend. It does have a very good heal and it does have good detection, like it has very good concealment, but it has very, very lackluster DPM. It actually has absolutely sad DPM. The guns are shooting so slow, you have only 4 of them, and you kind of rely on your zombie heal, like your good super heal and your conceal, but it's not really worth my opinion. You even with your good heal, you still trade usually pretty badly because your gun DPM is so lackluster. Your torpedoes are pretty good, but they have very long reloads, so it's also not really worth speccing into them. And overall, I think Nostashimi is not it would be one of the least picks I would go for as a tier 9. Next off, we have Malta. Now, Malta and Immelmann I'm going to put together into one slot here. Malta and Immelmann are both CVs. They're both fairly strong. Although, when it comes to power levels on tier 10, I would put Hakurio, Shinano, FDR, and so on above it. But they're still tier 10 CVs, they're still very strong. I'm not really gonna go too much over them. I'm not a CV player, as you know, so we're gonna do this. Now we have the GK. Now the GK, for those of you who remember, used to be a tech tree after Preußen got released and became a new tech tree, and GK became a coal ship. Now, GK itself is not a bad ship. I do think, personally, it's the worst tier 10 ship, battleship, but let me explain. In my opinion, and people can fight me in the comments for it, I don't think there's any bad tier 10 battleship in the game. I just think most of them are overtuned. I think it's one of the most overtuned classes in the game, especially with the 457 30mm overmatch and plus. However, when it comes to a BB ranking, GK would be probably in the bottom. You have 12 guns, which are okay from the accuracy, but not really amazing. But the problem is you don't have the 30mm overmatch. You also don't, in theory, you have a lot of armor, but your superstructure is so massive, so people just shoot your superstructure constantly, and you will, like, your HP pool and armor don't matter that much, because people can, regardless of your angles, smash you for, like, multiple thousands of damage. Like, 15k plus salvos are not rare, because your superstructure is big. Your firing angles are absolutely awful, so you need to show a lot of broadside to use all of them, all of your guns, and even if you can't get citadeled, I don't think it's really a good ship. Yeah, it would probably be next to Slava, although Slava has the advantage of being super accurate, the worst pick when it comes to BBs in my opinion. Still, it's a tier 10 BB, so I'm not saying it's a bad ship, because again, I don't think there is a bad tier 10 BB. I just think all of the other ships are overtuned in that regard, and that's why I wouldn't recommend it necessarily. Although, you're not going wrong with it, it can still work, it can still dish out a lot of damage overall, so you be the judge about that. Next one, we have Brisbane. Now, Brisbane is pretty much, you take a Minotaur, you give it HE, and you give it more torpedoes. And a 12 km radar, but you cannot use smoke. On first, this sounds all really cool, but it has severe drawbacks over Minotaur. First of all, you pretty much cut the DPM in half. It has way longer reload, and it also has worse concealment. And your radar, while it has 12 km, has also way shorter duration time. So you pay a lot for having better torpedoes and HE. Also, your torpedo reload is also quite a bit longer than on Minotaur. So, it's not coming out without its drawbacks. However, having HE gives you a nice utility of forcing DCPs, and your torpedo power of 20 torpedoes, 10 per side instead of 8, and 13.5 km range means you can kind of block entire valleys with torpedoes, especially when you're retreating, which can be fairly strong. The 12 km height radar again is nice, because obviously 12 km, but again your concealment is I think 9.8 or 9.6, so quite a bit worse than Minotaur. Your AP is a double-edged sword. In theory, your AP is better and worse. You don't have short fuse AP, meaning you're not really gonna pen DDs, but for that you have HE. But not having short fuse on the 152s means you're gonna be able to Citadel cruisers at better ranges than the Minotaur. Although it's marginally, because we're talking about 152mm guns, so it's not like these are 203s or something. But it's the drawback and a downside. However, again, you can just go with the HE then to farm down the DD players, so that's not really a problem. Overall, it's a decent ship. Would I recommend it as a tier 10? Yeah, I would say it's pretty good, but I prefer personally playing the Tech Tree, the Raider Minotaur. Next one, we have a Napoli, and I'm instantly gonna say it's straight up the best ship you can buy for coal, because Napoli, if you've seen it on my YouTube channel mainly, Napoli is the one cruiser in the game that does not care about matchmaking. It legit does not care about matchmaking. Napoli is the ship you choose how you want to play it. You don't really need to adapt to situations, and let me explain you why. Napoli is ridiculously tanky. Especially for a cruiser, it doesn't really care about high caliber beasts. Napoli has insanely good concealment. Napoli has an exhaust smoke generator, meaning if you're in trouble you can use it to get out or you can push somebody. Napoli has extremely strong secondaries. Napoli has torpedoes. And it has, on top of that, while the main guns can be not always consistent, they mostly are still, but you have 254mm guns, meaning you also overmatch super light cruisers such as Minotaur or Smolensk. So overall, this thing is ridiculously strong, and you choose how to play pretty much any engagement. Whoever fought against a good Napoli player knows how frustrating it can be killing this thing, because you're fast, good concealment, insane armor. So this is by far, in my opinion, the best pick for coal you can go on tier 10. And I wouldn't be surprised if they will at some point, maybe, I don't know, maybe remove it. I'm not saying they will, because there's no announcement, nothing, but I wouldn't be surprised if it at some point will be removed from the coal. Who knows? Even though there's nothing regarding it, but it's just so strong. And there's a reason why it's also banned in CBs and so on always, because it's such a strong pick, and in randoms it's also performing very well. So definitely my top pick, one of the best chips to get. Exowolf, thank you so much for the prime. Next on, we have the U4501.
Subscribed.
This is probably the most annoying submarine to fight in the entire game, especially for not as good players in the battle. Now, is it a good submarine? Yes, it's a very good submarine. The thing is, it plays completely the opposite as all other submarines. Now, let me explain. If you're familiar with submarines, every submarine in the game is fast above the water and on periscope depth. That's where usually submarines have their maximum speed. Periscope and above the water. Most of them, or nearly every submarine, is very slow on deep waters. Now, there are some exceptions. For example, U2500 has the same speed across the board, no matter where it is, which is fairly strong. And Balau as well, as far as I'm aware of. U4500, though, works completely the opposite. This submarine is extremely slow on periscope, or slow, not extremely slow, we're still talking about 23 knots or 4. It's slow above the water and on periscope, but it's extremely fast deep water, so 30 meters, 60 meters. Meaning, for the average player, this is by far the most frustrating submarine to fight, because it's the one that basically zooms around under the water, where the other ones would be very, very slow. And they're only really fast above periscope or above the water. So, and coming on top of that, it has insanely good space concealment. It has ridiculously fast torpedo reload. And it reloads all torpedo tubes at the same time, which is 10 torpedoes. 4 in the front, 6 in the back. It's pretty much like a fidget spinner. You drive around targets, you launch torpedoes. You don't even need to ping necessarily, although you can, because again, you ping under deep water, rely on the team spotting, and you're so fast that the people just will always miss their SW pretty much unless they get a random hit. So it's extremely frustrating to play against. I don't think it's the best submarine. In fact, I think the best submarine is Archerfish and K1 currently in the game. But it doesn't matter that it's for the average population. This is by far the most frustrating one to fight against, and the torpedo spam is unreal. So it's definitely a strong pick, and I would recommend it if you like submarines. Although it does play completely different than the other submarines. So keep that in mind. Next one, we have Yoshino. Yoshino is pretty much the mega Zao, the big brother of Zao. You play the ship also mostly on medium to long range because you're rather squishy. But you do have insane HE and AP. The AP is pretty good because 310mm guns with quite decent pen. And the HE is absolutely disgusting because high alpha and good fire chance. And the accuracy and reload is very good. On top of that, you also get good concealment and torpedoes, which you can 20 cam torpedoes, which you can launch, or 12 cam torpedoes. I do recommend the 20 cam torpedoes because it's, while they are on paper worse than the 12 cams, you don't really want to be with Yoshino at 12 cam range to the enemy because you're such a squishy and big target. And the 20 cams are like randomly hitting some players in this games because you just hit with them occasionally because people forget, don't really expect them, or are tunnel visions and tend to eat them as well. So if you're looking for a more defensively played ship that doesn't have the biggest game impact but can farm quite some decent damage numbers and rightly played is pretty effective, then Yoshino is definitely worth a pick. And unlike Azuma on tier 9, which I don't recommend, this thing has 30mm of middle armor, meaning you can actually tank quite a bit when it's 420 or lower caliber. We're later gonna come to Azuma, and I will not recommend it because it pretty much works exactly the same as Yoshino, just that it has worse gun performance when it comes to accuracy and reload. And Azuma has 27 all across the board while being still so huge. And since tier 9 can also fight tier 10 and super ships, you don't really can use this armor because there's legit no ship that you can really stop. There are some exceptions, Mecklenburg, Rhode Island, and so on, but mainly everybody's just gonna completely smash you if they hit their middle part. And Yoshino doesn't have that problem because there's a fair few BBs it can use its armor against, such as GK. We have Montana, we have Liptard, we have, what else is a 4-6? We have Slava and so on. Like, all these ships that you usually completely smash you in the middle part on an Azuma will not do nowhere near as much damage to Yoshino. Now, if you show broadside in both, you explode though. So Yoshino recommended, Azuma not really, although Azuma is pretty much in a lot of regards the same ship. But that armor change makes it so much different for me to not recommending it, personally. So, Moskva. Moskva used to be also a tactical ship, got replaced by Petropavlovsk. Or Nevsky, I don't know which one of the two. I think it was replaced by Petropavlovsk. No, it was replaced by Nevsky, never mind. Moskva is a very, very good ship. It has insanely good guns, it has good reload, it has amazing armor if you angle, and yeah, it's pretty solid. And the only real downside you have is that you are not allowed to show broadside, because then you go back to the port instantly, and you have really bad concealment with 14.1 km. Although you do have a 12 km height radar, and again you have a lot of 50mm platings everywhere, so once you're angled, you're fairly durable. I recommend Moskva. I think it's an absolute amazing pick for T10. However, for the average Joe, please, or for the bad players, please, you need to learn, do not show broadside, because once you show broadside, you can be insta-death struck in this thing, because the citadel is extremely high above the water. If you know what you're doing, though, it's extremely effective, so I recommend this ship nevertheless. It's kind of a hard learning curve. You have a lot of Moskva players who just die in the first 3 minutes of the game because they show broadside to BBs. But those who manage to utilize its strength and its armor will have a good time, because this ship is extremely strong. Next one, we have Kaba, the OG gunboat. Back in the day, we're talking about a lot of years, probably like 6-7 years ago, Kaba used to be overpowered. It's nowhere near as like that. There's so many things like Gdansk, Smoland, Kleber, and everything that just is, it's just better. But however, Kaba is still the honest farming DD that I think personally is more a ship to get for fun, and it should not be underestimated. It should really not underestimate it. Khabarovsk is a ship that's about dishing out damage while basically being able to tank damage due to the armor and also due to the heals, but at the same time, of course, duking with the speed and dodging. It's a legit DD that's all about farming damage. You have 8 guns, you have good arcs, you have decent range, especially with lag mod. You have 50mm side plating, and you have heals. I wouldn't play the Khabarovsk with smokescreen, personally. You can also play it with smokescreen, but then you give up the heals. So I think it's pretty much a ship where you speed duke, you go full speed, you stop, you farm BBs, cruisers, and everything down. This is not really for cap contesting, nor does it have any remote good concealment. In fact, it has some of the worst concealment in the game, so this is not for cap contesting or rushing down and chasing a Shima and then being spotted and dying. This is all about damage farming and being like a supportive DD on the flank. And just keep annoying the BBs, forcing DCPs, getting permafires. And if you manage to spot a DD due to your team's help, or you can use terrain to spot them to minimize your concealment pretty much, it pretty much can 1v1 most DDs in the game. You have again the insane armor and insane gun power and good arcs, so it's a fun boat. I recommend it because it can be a lot of fun, but I don't think it's in the top places when it comes to T10 DDs. That's more stuff like, again, Kleber, Smolensk, Gdansk, and so on. Marceau. But a fun ship nevertheless, so I recommend it regardless. Next off, we have the Salem. Salem is pretty much 1-to-1 Des Moines, with the difference that you have an 8.5 cam radar or a hydro. You have to choose if you want the hydro or the radar. But you get, unlike Des Moines, you get a super heal. Now, personally, I don't think there's a reason to get Salem. Let me explain why. I think Des Moines is overall better because you have better radar, you have the ability to slot the range mod, and you can have radar and hydroacoustic surge at the same time, which you cannot have with Salem. Now, in theory, super heal sounds very cool on Salem, but the problem with the Salem is, just like with Des Moines, HG spam is not your problem. Healable damage is not your problem. Your problem is that you get completely overmatched by high caliber BBs and lose like half your HP from a random citadel through the nose or back. And this is not healable with the super heal. So basically, the super heal is useless in that regard. If you get citadeled, you can heal like, I don't know, 10-20% of it and the rest is gone. So not only is your super heal useless directly, you can't even heal it up with the follow-up heals anymore. And HG spam again is not really, and fires are not really the problem that Des Moines has to deal with. It's mostly about the citadels from the high caliber BBs, which you can't prevent with that armor layout. So Salem is an okay ship, but I wouldn't buy it personally as long as you have a Des Moines and you have other ships to get. Hayate is next. Now Hayate is a pretty decent ship. It's a bit underrated. For those of you who remember, Hayate and Smolensk back in the day were released at the same time. And honestly, everybody should have taken Smolensk for free XP back then over Hayate for free XP. That's a long time ago though, then Smolensk got removed and Hayate became a coal ship. It was never a bad ship. In fact, you had pretty much the Shima that is built into guns. You have worse concealment than Shima, but you have the same 127mm guns with high alpha, but instead of Shima, you have also really good gun reload of them. For that gun reload, you lose a bit of concealment and you lose 1 torpedo tube. Now Hayate got another buff, I think 1.5 years ago, or 2, that it has 10 torpedoes, but it also gets now a torpedo reload booster. So, in theory, you're not only having better gun DPM than Shimakaze, you also have the ability, only once though, because obviously, or only if you have the torpedo reload booster ready, to launch 20 torpedoes instead of 10. So you can launch 5 more than the Shima with a full set, so you can launch 20 instead of 15. However, the torpedo reload is pretty long, and it's all about the guns pretty much, because the IGN torpedoes, while they do a lot of damage, they don't really hit that often because the concealment is pretty bad. And yeah. One more thing though worth noting, unlike Shima, it's also a bit more sluggish, so keep that in mind. Hayate is a great ship, you have decent conceal, you have amazing gun power, and you have okay-ish torpedoes, but it is fairly sluggish. You have worse conceal, again with 6.1 I think, instead of 5.78 from Shima, or 5.6 I think. So you do lose the stealthiness and maneuverability. But again, gun DPM is very, very good. And it should not be underrated. It was never a bad ship, and with the torpedo booster, it's actually even great because you can occasionally block an entire alley with the 12 km torpedoes as well, and the gun power is amazing. So Hayate is also recommended. Next one is Tromp. Now Tromp is a very unique DD. It's the only Dutch DD in the game, and it also is the only DD that, as I'm aware of, can drop airstrikes. Now Tromp has pretty decent guns, 30mm base pen on the HE as well. It's 152s, I think. It has a fairly big HP pool with, I think, 29 or 28k HP. And again, you have the ability to not only launch torpedoes, which are 12 km, only 3 per side though, but also to drop airstrikes. Now the ability of airstrikes is absolutely crazy. It got buffed also around, I don't know the exact value, so I have to guess. It's like also quite a long time ago, I would say 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago. Tromp used to have 10 km airstrike range on the conceal of 5.9 km. They buffed it to 12 km, meaning you can also pretty much use it outside of radar ranges. This thing can stealth drop airplanes from a safe position. You have 6 km of playing time ground before you would get spotted from your airstrikes. Like, you have 5.9 concealment, but you can drop the airstrikes up to 12 km away from you. They're very easy to aim because they're extremely fast deploying. I think 10 seconds or 11 seconds, which are the fastest. They cover a small square, but they have insanely good fire chance, and you drop a lot of bombs. They also have less pen than the cruiser counterparts, but you don't matter. You can pinpoint accurately aim for superstructures and do enormous amount of damage. If you put Hellflick on the ship even more, you're gonna be easily triggering the bomb hits to get a 3rd strike instead of only 2. And you can also get rivers rather decently with the ship as well, meaning this thing can be an absolute monster to play against. And on top of that, you have 30mm pen, so if you have cover and you can free farm a cruiser, you can pen with the HGM pretty much on the entire ship's length. And for example, the Des Moines player will suffer if you just chunk him for like 4k salvos each time you hit him. The only downside is it's very slow, and it doesn't have a smoke screen or heal. However, you have a speed boost. Once you activate that, you're pretty fast again, and I think it's a 15% speed boost or 10, so it's a bit better than the normal one. Without the speed boost though, it's one of the slower DDs. I definitely recommend it. It's very unique, and it's fairly strong with the airstrikes. You can also force people out of campy positions with the airstrikes, or making them pay it pretty hard. Definitely recommend it. Next one, Alvaro de Bazan. Alvaro de Bazan. Nah, I'm sorry, I can't speak Spanish. Good ship. Good HP pool, pretty decent firepower, gun power or firepower, and alright torpedoes. The torpedoes are also having good range and are fairly stealthy, but just like with the USS Black, they're fairly slow as well. However, you have 10 of them, as far as I'm aware of. It's 10, right? Is it 10 or 8? I'm not sure, but it's a lot of torpedoes. And you have 8 guns. The only real downside you have with Alvaro is the bad maneuverability and the kind of bad concealment. Like, the concealment is not that good, and the maneuverability is pretty bad. The gun power is pretty good, and the torpedoes are also nice. The HP pool is pretty big as well, with over 30k. And one more thing that's worth mentioning is you have a pretty good F key. The F key gives you 3 salvos in a rapid interaction. Like, instead of shooting normally, you get a burst fire of 3 salvos, which is not only 3 salvos in a row real quick, it's also having 10% better dispersion on the salvos. So if you can aim very well with the guns, you can pinpoint aim the shells pretty much, doing massive amount of damage. And on top of that, the burst fire is not even much slower than you reload, so you're not even losing too much effective DPM while burst firing, which is very nice. So overall, a very unique boat. Also the only Spanish premium DD, and if you want to grind the Spanish DD captain on it, feel free to do so. It's a great ship to play. It's very underrated. I think another point that's very good about Avaro is that people do tend to underestimate the thing. Big guns, a lot of damage output, and high HP pool mean you can trade fairly well. And a lot of people underestimate this boat, really. Just like Hayate, it's very underrated in my opinion. So definitely recommend it as well. Moving on to Marceau. Now Marceau is absolutely amazing. It's a very good crew, a very good DD. It's very fast. It has high damage output, okay-ish torpedoes, and it's pretty much like, imagine the Kleber, but instead of having harder hitting guns and a reload booster, you have permanently good reload, but the guns are not as strong as Kleber guns. And you are losing it on gun arcs, because the gun arcs are absolutely horrible. The shells are very floaty despite being very good. This is a ship that definitely is also relies on speed duking, using the speed to your advantage, farming down opponents, rushing them. And I think it's a very skill-based ship, just like Kleber, that it is extremely strong, but you need to have some game knowledge to make it perfectly work, because it has really bad concealment and no smoke screen. So it's more the shoot and duke destroyer kind of gameplay, and to make the most out of it, you need to be a bit better than the game to make it fully work. But then again, if you manage it, it's very, very strong and powerful, and just like Kleber, an absolute amazing ship. Definitely recommend it, but be a bit more experienced in the game. If you're a noob that just goes full speed the whole time, you will go back to port rather easily. It's at least against better players who can aim. Next one, F. Sherman. Forrest Sherman. Extremely high gun DPM. You have insanely good reload. You have SAP and HE. Meaning you can have insane amount of damage output. However, and you have American smoke screens. However, and a hydro as well. However, one thing that's really annoying is you have very bad torpedo angles, you have insanely bad concealment, and you are crazy slow. Now, if you look for a ship that's just sits in the smoke screen and farms, then Sherman might be the perfect ship for you. But in today's meta, it kind of has the problem that you can't really disengage if you don't watch out about the map, because most BBs nowadays are faster than you. This thing is extremely slow. We're talking about 35 knots, which is really bad for a DD. You don't really have anything to... Once the team is not spotting for you and you can't shoot outside of your smoke screen, you can't play too well in the open, because people can hit you rather easily due to your sluggish maneuverability and speed. And you don't have the torpedo power to really block somebody from pushing you. Now, once you are in a radar-free zone and you can go into a cap, you can completely contest and block it, and no DD can really push you unless it has radar or better hydro. But I would say it's very repetitive with sitting in the smoke screen to farm it down, and it's not that good. Now, it's not a bad ship, but I think the lacking of speed is kind of making it a bit more underwhelming. However, I still recommend it because it's not a bad ship, and the DPM is absurdly high, so you can definitely get some crazy numbers with it. And if DD players don't respect you and just push your smoke screen, you can absolutely annihilate them. So I'll give it a recommendation, but I personally wouldn't take it. I would take it at a later point. I would take other tier 10 DDs in the cold section before this one. Not bad though, but very repetitive to play. Next one, we have the Halford. Now, Halford is a ship that got actually buffed a few months ago. I think like 2-3 months ago. Actually, very recently, it got buffed quite a bit. It got an insanely big reload buff, and it also got flatter shell arcs. Halford is the only tier 9 hybrid DD, US hybrid DD, that is pretty much having, see it like a Benson with 4 guns, but you can launch occasionally a rocket plane squad. You lose a torpedo tube for the ability to launch planes. Now, before the buff, I thought Halford was an okay ship. You didn't have really the gun DPM to keep up with other DDs, but you had the ability to spot with the planes, which could be fairly strong and also game deciding if you needed to find a certain individual and farm him down fast. So, or spot him for a team so you can finish him off. So it was always performance-wise not that great. but it had the ability to spot, and that making it pretty decent. However, with the recent change, the gun DPM got buffed quite a bit, and the guns are easier to aim. So this thing is extremely versatile. You're not as strong as a Velos when it comes to gun DPM, for example, but you definitely have pretty good reload now, and you have the ability with the planes to spot wherever your team needs it. You have American smoke screens and still one torpedo launcher, so definitely recommend it, and a very strong ship as well, if you like hybrids. Next one, Groningen. Groningen is a bit like a Sherman, that you're having bad concealment, you're extremely slow, you don't have any torpedo armament, but you have extremely high DPM. The gun damage output is extremely strong. Like, you can pretty much trade with anything on tier 9 with the gun DPM this thing has. The problem is, you can fight against tier 10 and 11 as well in this boat. So, yeah, the speed is also kind of killing it there. However, there's often also occasionally tier 9 ranked or something, where you can potentially only fight tier 10 or 9 only. And then it excels there. It's very good at cap contesting. Again, the gun DPM is crazy. You can farm people down as well. Your AA is also pretty decent, but you have no stopping power in form of AA. So it's a good ship. It's a good ship, but it's also very repetitive to play. You smoke up, you farm. You're not really going to shoot too much in the open because slow speed, unless you can use terrain. It does have floaty arcs, unlike Sherman though, so you can lob over a lot of islands where Sherman couldn't lob over. So for tier 9, I'll give it a recommendation, but it's also fairly repetitive to play. Especially in ranked though, pretty decent. Next one is Aegir. Aegir is a ship that's alright. It's not bad, it's not great. You get a battle cruiser pretty much here. You get a cruiser with insanely good side plating armor, which is 90 millimeters. Does it get an icebreaker? Let me quickly check. I can't remember if Aegir gets an icebreaker or not. No, it doesn't get an icebreaker. Okay, good. So basically, Aegir has insanely good side plating and decent guns with the 305s. However, they're not really like having a particularly good reload, meaning you're not really having a big damage output, and you have a massive nose that can be overmatched, plus 30mm armor in the middle, meaning depending on the situation, high caliber BBs, if they know where to shoot, they will just do massive amount of damage to you. Also, if you show broadside, you are still rather easily to be citadeled, at least by BBs. The guns, again, the 305s are alright, and you can definitely punish cruiser players that do mistakes with these guns fairly well as well. However, overall, the DPM or the damage output is pretty lackluster because you're missing a bit of reload. And yeah, I would, if I could choose something, I would give it like maybe 2-second better reload so it can keep a bit up with the damage. It's not a bad ship though. Again, you have 305s with good pen and also decent HE performance as well. You have 6-cam torpedoes for self-defense. You have a 6-cam German Hydro. You have heals. So it can be durable, but depending how good the opponents are and where to shoot, you can go rather quickly to the bottom of the sea. And you kind of need them to bait shooting them into your side plating, because if they shoot your superstructure or deck, it doesn't really matter that much. It's alright though. And it can be cool in like scenarios as brawls, where you just, the brawl modes, the 1v1 or 2v2 brawls on tier 9, where you just go in and you torp each other, then it can also be fairly effective. It's alright. I'll give it okay. Next one is Zuma. We talked about it already. I don't recommend it over Yoshino for the armor reasons, and we're gonna go next to the Iwami. Iwami works like all the Japanese ships. The further you're away, the more consistent your guns. The closer you are, the less of your bonus you get. Basically, Japanese BBs are getting like kind of a dispersion bonus the further they're away, which you don't get when you're very close. Meaning, you're not really gonna be the most accurate ship in close range. It has fast reload. The guns are overall decent. You have only 8 of them though, and again in brawls they're fairly inconsistent, unlike on range. The reload is pretty good though. Armor-wise, Iwami is not that great either because you're covered in a lot of 32mm parts, meaning that you can get farmed, especially by 2 or 3 HG and higher, or IFHG 150mm guns, you can be farmed down rather quickly. You do have also torpedoes, it's worth mentioning, and your secondary armament is theoretically not bad, but you shouldn't build into it because once you're too close, your main guns are like not really working the way you want, and your armor doesn't support it, so you want to be more in the back line. It's an alright tier 9 ship. If you want to grind the Japanese BB captain, you can definitely play it, because the captain you put on this ship is pretty much suitable for all Japanese BBs from Yamato to Bungo. So it's an alright ship. I like playing it, but you need to play it more carefully to medium to longer ranges. So that's Iwami for you. Next one, Kearsarge. Kearsarge is for me personally a very boring ship, however is extremely powerful. Kearsarge is a hybrid battleship that gets tiny Tims as a plane squad of tiny Tims, which can be, again, it's not about the draw damage output, it's more about the spotting capabilities with it, and you get a ship that has 12 NC guns on tier 9. You have longer reload obviously, but these guns are fairly consistent, and the only real problem you have with these guns is that the shells are slow. Once you manage to make this work for you though, you can aim with them fairly well. Kearsarge broadside is no joke and can absolutely annihilate a lot of opponents because you have 12 NC guns against, which have a pretty big smashing power. The only downside is the slow shell speed, meaning you have to be very comfortable with aiming them. And also, what is also a nice playstyle is you can, even if the people push into you, angled in, you can switch to HG, shoot the full broadside on HG or somebody, and if he DCPs, you can use your plane squad to force fires with the tiny Tims on BBs when they're off cooldown. So you can like kind of force DCPs a lot with the planes or the guns, getting insanely amount of fire damage as well once they're angled. And once they show broadside, you have a very hefty 12 barreled AP broadside. So overall, it's a very strong ship. It does have very long reload though, I think 36 seconds base. And you can kind of keep that because you go for the accuracy mod on your SPBs instead of reload. So it's a good ship. It's a very strong ship, in fact, but I'm not a big fan of playing it. I think it's rather boring. But it's definitely gonna get a recommendation from me because it's a very strong ship. Next off is Tulsa. Tulsa is the baby Des Moines on tier 9 that has extremely accurate guns. The same reload as Des Moines. The downside is you have less armor and you have 1 barrel less on each turret, so 6 instead of 9 guns. You also are covered in 27mm of armor and don't have a 30mm middle part, meaning you can be overmatched by anything above 380, so 406 and higher will overmatch you and pretty much full pen you everywhere on the ship, making it very, very carefully played around islands. However, you also have better concealment than Des Moines. You have like 9 point something cam concealment, I don't know the exact value now, 9.23 I think. And you can have 9 cam radar, meaning you can be very close at the front line with regards that you either have a smoke screen that helps you or you have terrain. Like if you have a smoke bot in your division, this thing can be extremely strong. Also worth mentioning, Tulsa got buffed a couple of months ago as well. It has DD dispersion, meaning the gun's extremely accurate. Even accurate than normal cruiser, the gun dispersion. You can pinpoint aim pretty much these 6 guns, and you have still the improved AP angles. So Tulsa is a ship that heavily depends how good you are with using terrain or having a smoke mate with you, but it's definitely not a bad ship, so it gets recommended by me as well. Next is the Kano. Kano is just like Aegir, a large cruiser. With the difference, unlike Aegir, it has a bit more firepower, and it is extremely fast as well. However, it's also very humongous. It's very big, and you can shoot it fairly easily because it's just a thick boat. It eats a ton of damage if you can't angle against certain targets, and it's massive, so it's not that hard to miss it, even though it can be pretty fast. The AP is pretty decent. The HG is pretty good. You do lacking again the reload though, so It's an alright ship. I would definitely put it on a list that it can perform fairly well, but it wouldn't be one of my first picks either. So that's Kano for you. And we're now going to Marco Polo. Now Marco Polo is an interesting ship as well. It got buffed a couple of months or years. I don't know the exact date, but months or years ago as well. It has better Sigma now, as far as I'm aware of, so it's more consistent. Marco Polo is pretty much a tier 9 Roma, if you want to say it like this. And instead of 381mm guns, it has 406mm SEP guns, meaning you can do quite some damage with the guns. But you can be sitted, and you're also pretty tanky if you're angled. The problem is, if you show broadside, you can get sit-tilt rather easily as well. And the guns are not that consistent. The reload is also a bit longer. So overall, I would say Marco Polo is a average tier 9 ship. I made a guide about it on my YouTube channel. It did perform okay, but I wouldn't really take it as a first cold ship. It's okay. It's okay. But nothing more, so alright. Z44 is a torpedo boat. It's fully like, it's a German 12 km torpedo boat that's all about spamming torpedoes with rapid reload. The torpedoes are fairly decent, they do okay damage, but they're extremely fast and reload quickly, and they're also very stealthy. So if I had to choose between this and Jaeger when it comes just for torpedo gameplay, I would go for Z44 because Jaeger's torpedoes suck. Is it still a good ship? It's still a torpedo boat, so I don't think it's that great, but if I had to choose between this and Jaeger, I would always go for the Z44, because you also have smokescreen and you also have somewhat decent gun power, even though the gun power is really not worth mentioning. But you have a smokescreen and good torpedoes, so if you're looking for a torpedo boat in the coal department, Z44 is definitely not bad. Now, Pommern. My most hated tier 9 ship. In randoms, at least. Pommern is a ship that straight up is bad. It's a bad ship. At least in random battles, it's extremely bad. You have shitty firing angles, you eat a ton of damage, your main guns are inconsistent, and you really rely on your secondary armament, which makes it pretty much not worth taking it out to random battles. Now, it can perform in ranked, but I'm gonna be honest here, and a lot of Pommern players will be sad about it, but there is no reason to play Pommern since Prinz Ruprecht and Los Andes exist. Prinz Ruprecht is in any regard the better ship, besides maybe HP pool. Even survivability, because Prinz Ruprecht is way smaller of a target. Prinz Ruprecht has better torpedoes, it has more secondary DPM, and it has 420mm guns, which means it can also overmatch 27mm of armor, which Pommern can't with the 381s. Plus it has also better firing angles and better concealment. Ruprecht is missing an icebreaker. Ruprecht also has an icebreaker. Just like Schlieffen, Ruprecht has also an icebreaker. I can show it to you. The only downside with Ruprecht is it has 27mm of armor on the upper part, which can be overmatched. But that doesn't really matter because it's a pretty small part. Here you can see the icebreaker on Ruprecht. Here you can see the icebreaker with 30mm. Which can also be overmatched by 490s, but you don't really fight that. And you have this nose, which is not that big. And then you're covered in really big platings. And when it comes to Los Andes, I don't need to explain myself too much, I guess. Los Andes is an extremely strong ship, even after the nerfs to the secondary DPM. Los Andes is still one of the best secondary boats, and just like Liptard, extremely survivable. So, for me, there is no reason to get the Pommern in any regard. You can use it in randoms. Also, Principally has 406mm guns, sorry. Doesn't change the fact it can overmatch 27, which Pommern can't. You can use it in ranked, you can use it in brawls, it's alright there, but for randoms, I think Pommern is absolutely gigantic piece of garbage, and you can't really change my mind about it. It just doesn't bring any to the table that Tech 3 ships can't do better. Next one, Jaeger. Oh, there's also gonna be a lot of hate in chat right now. I'm well aware of that, all under the YouTube comments. Jaeger is absolutely terrible. The only good thing about Jaeger is the concealment. I know people love the ship, but it doesn't really bring anything to the table besides concealment. It's sluggish, it accelerates very slowly and brakes very slowly. It has pretty much no gun power. It has no smoke screen, but a heal. But the heal is not really helping you because you're not gonna really endure too much with it. And while you have insanely good torpedo reload, your torpedoes are basically doing no damage. They're fast, and you reload them quickly, but they have extremely low damage output. So, to put it into perspective, you see a Musashi, you hit him with 12 torpedoes, for all 12 torpedoes, and let's just say you hit 10 of them on the torpedo belt, you will need 3 to 4 full salvos to kill a Musashi, when other DDs need 1 or 2 salvos to do the same. So the damage output is very, very bad. You can't really contest objectives with it. It's just more like a meme boat. I mean, if you love torpedo boats and you just want to launch torpedoes, then go ahead, get Jaeger. But I think in a more competitive environment, seeing it how it performs in the battles, I think it's absolute jack shit. Next one, we have the Flint. The Flint is pretty much an Atlanta with smoke screens instead of radar on tier 7. It used to be pretty good, but then they changed how changed captain skills a few years ago on cruisers, so you couldn't get more range again, and there's no real reason to play it when it comes to just purely smoke farming. I don't think it's that good anymore, and I would just play Atlanta with the radar rather than this. It has very high arcs, you can shoot it island-based as well, but I don't think it's really that good of a ship anymore. It used to be very, very strong, but with the changes to the cruiser skills and not being able to get higher ranges on the Flint, it's not really that much worth it anymore. It's a shame, it used to be a pretty good ship. Next off, we have the Key. The Key is a ship that's fairly good as well. It's pretty much the Magi, with more torpedo protection, if I'm not wrong. A bit less consistent guns and torpedoes. You pay it though with being easier to citadel. So if you like a Magi, you will definitely like the Key as well. You do have to play it a bit more careful though, because you are easier to citadel than a Magi. You don't have that turtleback-ish that a Magi has at close range. Or at higher ranges, I can't remember. But Magi had some really interesting armor layout. Your guns are, as far as I'm aware, a bit less inconsistent, but on longer ranges it's still fairly accurate. And you do have the 10 km torpedoes in the back, which can be a nasty surprise if you push somebody and they forget about it, and you just can like top them out. It's a cool surprise because a lot of people forget that Key has torpedoes. It's an alright tier 8. I don't think it's that amazing. I don't think it's bad though. So it's an okay ship. I recommend it. It's not bad. It will perform. It's a battleship. Now we have the tier 8 ship Anhalt, and here we come to a fun fact again. This is a ship I definitely not recommend. It has 15 guns, which sound on paper amazing, but these 350mm guns have basically no AP penetration. And they're also fairly slow when it comes to shell speed. These guns cannot citadel battleships on the same tier or higher reliably. You need to be extremely close to even have the chance to citadel BB. So you mostly rely on HG spam and your torpedoes and yeah, upper belt volleys. You can't really citadel BBs with this. It can work against cruisers, but then again, cruisers can angle against it on same tier and higher because you have 350s, meaning you cannot overmatch 25mm of bow armor already, meaning every cruiser can nose in tank you pretty much. You're very long, you're slow. The only good thing you have pretty much going for you is the torpedoes and that you have barely any superstructure. But other than that, it's a pretty bad ship and I wouldn't recommend it. Funnily enough, I have a lot of Krakens in it, but I still think, even though that I have a lot of Krakens in it, it's a shit ship. It's really not that good. We always got mostly lucky in these games, to be honest with you guys. Next, we have the Podhasky. And the Podhasky is pretty much a Kutuzov that has only AP, which have also improved AP angles, and they are also short fuse as far as I'm aware. Basically, see it a bit like you're playing a Royal Navy cruiser that smokes up and then shoots with the only AP and farms down enemies. However, you have worse smoke firing penalty, but faster shell speed at the same time. It's an alright ship. I don't like it that much. I prefer Kutuzov for having HG over this one, but it has a short duration smoke screens that can utilized for farming a bit and then disengaging it. but you don't really have good torpedoes, 4 km range only, and it's rather squishy, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It's okay, but nothing more. In fact, I would even say it's not that good. There are better ships, such as Nottingham. Nottingham is a ship I barely played, but when I played it, oh my. I'm actually kind of surprised by this ship. You have 9 203mm guns. You have decent torpedoes. You also have basically no smoke firing penalty. You have extremely low smoke firing penalty considering that these are 203mm guns. You have torpedoes and you have also smoke screens. I think this ship is actually pretty decent. Yes, it's rather squishy and can be citadeled rather easily, but usually you're either angled in or you're not spotted. So I think this is actually a pretty decent surprise for Tier 8, and it's underrated AF. Just like Hayate and Alvaro, I think this is a very underrated ship, and if you know how to play it, it can perform very decently. So this is a recommendation from me. Then we have, what do we have left now? We are only, oops, need to put this up. Good. Let me quickly go down. We have next the Duke of York. Nothing to say. 1-to-1 a King George. Only difference is worse reload, but improved AP angles. Far worse reload, but you get improved AP angles and hydro. Not worth it. I think King George is by far the better ship because, yes, you get improved AP angles here, but you lose 4 seconds of reload over King George, or 5 even, I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5 seconds. And you also have 357mm guns, so it's not even like you have high, like, it's just not good. You spam HE mostly anyway for example, the spamming HE with the King George is just straight up better. So Duke of York, besides collecting purposes and looking really good as a ship, is not worth getting. King George is just far better as a tech tree. Shanos 43. Now this is a double-edged sword. I kind of like Shanos, but at the same time I hate it because Shanos guns are a hit or miss pony. Let's say it like this: the 283mm guns of the Shanos can be fairly inconsistent. Sometimes they work perfectly fine, but a lot of times they just completely suck and they just don't perform how you want them. You don't have the pen to Citadel same tier BBs. You rely more on pen damage instead of Citadels. And they can also be, from the accuracy point, very questionable from time to time. However, Shanos 43 compensates this, unlike the normal Shanos, with pretty good secondary DPM, and being the ability to brawl due to the great armor layout and also use the torpedoes. So I think it's a fun boat, especially in tier 7 ranked. You can make it definitely work, and the AP is still more than enough to deal with most cruisers. But the main guns can be from time to time very unreliable and frustrating. Overall, though, I still recommend it. I think it's a fun ship, the Shanos 43, but be aware that sometimes the main guns can be a bit tricky. It does have pretty good secondary armament, though, and you can brawl, especially in ranked, very well with it. Next one is Stored. I can't really judge anything about it. I haven't played this ship. It's the only ship. I can't at least remember the last time I played this ship, so I'm not gonna judge anything about it. You have to look up something else for that. We're just gonna skip it because I have actually no clue about this ship really that much. I haven't played it, I think, ever. Big torpedo reload, high rate of fire. Looks pretty good, but it does have bad concealment, which is not that great on tier 7. I don't know. It does have a heal though. And a smoke screen. A heal and smoke screen. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really judge this one, so we're just gonna skip it. It's the only one I didn't really play. Lazo is a cool boat. It's very unique. You spam mostly on longer ranges HE and AP. Mostly HE. This thing has a spotter plane that gives you insanely good... it gives you better range. But it's not like a normal spotter plane. You have shorter duration, but insanely short cooldown on it. So you can basically use the spotter plane, farm on range, it's over, and within a few seconds later you can use it again. So basically you have a perma spotter plane if you want so, multiple times that is shorter, but you have also extremely short cooldown on it, and on range you can dish out quite some damage with the DPM this boat has. Keep in mind though, Keep in mind though, this thing is very squishy, so you have to play it on long range, because on short range Lazo is gonna go back to port rather quickly. But it's a fun boat, and it can dish out a lot of damage on tier 7 with the gun DPM. It has 12 guns, super fast firing HE, 152 Soviet, really, really good. Last but not least, the Bliska or Bliska. My Polish is not good, sorry. It's an alright boat, it's a good tier 7, it's not excelling at anything. I think something like a Leningrad is better, or a Haider, but it does, if you get it to manage to fight it out at shorter ranges, Bliska is very strong, because you have, I think, 7 guns with decent reload. The only downside you really have with Bliska is the concealment is not that great, and it's rather sluggish, but again, you do have insanely good gun power, and you also are pretty fast, so it lacks maneuverability and concealment, but it does have the speed and insanely hard-hitting gun power, so it's an alright boat. If you're looking for tier 7, even if it's just for collecting purposes, just get yourself a treat and get Bliska. I did have pretty decent games with it as far as I remember, so a recommendation from my side. And with that, we have covered all the new coal ships again. Again, for those of you who missed it, I skipped the tier 6, 5, 3, and 4 ones, because you shouldn't really focus on them, because only from tier 7 and onwards it's worth taking a look. The other ones are more like collectors for collection purposes. I hope you enjoyed this coal guide. We went over everything. I hope you have an idea what kind of ships I think are currently pretty decent, what I would focus on. And thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And that was the ultimate coal ship guide 2025 for you. See you next time, your channelers, and out.